In the gray dawn of early 1940, Fortress Eben-Emael sat astride the Albert Canal like a sleeping titan of concrete and steel. Its massive gun turrets faced east toward Germany, commanding the bridges that spanned the river. Reinforced galleries tunneled deep into the limestone ridge, home to over 1,000 Belgian soldiers who believed they occupied Europe's strongest fortress. Sergeant Henri Deleuze ran his morning inspection, boots echoing down dim corridors. "If they come, they'll break here," said one corporal with quiet pride. Deleuze nodded but kept his gaze on the sky vents above, uneasy in the still air. Across the border, in a hidden German airfield near Cologne, a very different tension simmered. Lieutenant Rudolf Witzig gathered his specially trained assault engineers, men who had practiced for months in secrecy under the code-name Granite. Before them lay models of the fortress and glider wings gleaming under hangar lights. "By tomorrow," Witzig said, "you'll do what the world thinks impossible." That night, the soldiers of both nations prepared in silence, one side comforted by concrete, the other by audacity, and the Rhine winds whispered of what would come at dawn. At 3 a.m. on May 10, 1940, 11 German DFS-230 gliders towed into the night sky, engines droning softly before each rope was cut over the German-Belgian border. The world below shimmered faintly in starlight. Inside one glider, Lieutenant Witzig checked his watch. His men, faces pale in moonlight, clutched hollow charges and flamethrowers. "No shots until we land," he murmured. The plan demanded silence, no parachutes, no smoke, only the glide and sudden strike. The fortress below was quiet, unaware that death rode the clouds. Belgian sentries peered into darkness from turret cupolas, pipes glowing faintly. The night was calm enough to hear the wind sigh through antenna cables. Then, faint shadows cut across the moon, silent as ghosts. The first glider banked hard, wings nearly brushing the fort's roof before slamming onto the grassy top with a jarring skid. Crews leapt out, dragging explosives, sparks filling the dark. The assault on Eben-Emael had begun, not with thunder, but with whispers. The first explosion shattered the stillness, a dull, cavernous roar that rolled across the Albert Canal. Belgian soldiers stumbled from their bunks, the fortress trembling as dust rained from concrete ceilings. Above, German engineers raced across the grassy roof, placing shaped charges against steel turrets. Sparks carved arcs through smoke as flamethrowers hissed. Sergeant Deleuze emerged onto a rampart just in time to see a plume of fire erupt from Cupola 120. "We're under attack," he shouted into his radio, but static and chaos answered him. Below ground, crews scrambled to rotate batteries toward the unseen attackers, but controls jammed, linkages destroyed by the blasts. Witzig's men moved with brutal efficiency, each explosion tearing apart what seemed untouchable. "We have the high works. Signal the bridge team," someone cried. From the battlements, the view showed the 3 vital bridges over the canal, already targets for German paratroopers below. The fortress roared as shells cooked off inside shattered turrets, lighting the Belgian night with an unnatural dawn.
Inside Eben-Emael, confusion reigned, the labyrinth of corridors filled with smoke and alarm bells. Lieutenant Renard, commanding one underground battery, struggled to organize resistance. "Load the 75s! We fire blind if we must!" Men coughed, eyes watering from dust, as communication with the command post failed. In narrow stairwells, Belgian defenders climbed upward, rifles ready, unaware that the attackers had already sealed key exits with demolition charges. "The roof's lost," a messenger gasped. "They're cutting through the vents." Deleuze felt the fortress shudder again. Another explosion collapsed part of the upper gallery. Above ground, German engineers hurled grenades into embrasures, then slipped away before counterfire could answer. By dawn, the Belgians had fought their way to isolated firing positions, only to find their big guns crippled, cables melted, observation domes smashed. Yet they fought on, grimly, through the fortress that now smoked and echoed like a dying leviathan under siege.
While the fortress burned, another war raged on the bridges below. At Runhoven and Veldwezelt, Belgian engineers attempted to trigger demolition charges, only to find wiring cut by glider teams hours earlier. German paratroopers swarmed the defensive bunkers, tossing grenades and shouting commands in the pale morning light. "Hold the bridge," cried a Belgian lieutenant, before being buried under falling concrete. The air smelled of cordite and river mist as the first German tanks rumbled across from the east, the vanguard using the captured crossings made possible by Eben-Emael's isolation. From above, Witzig watched through binoculars, the canal glittering beneath smoke columns. His radio crackled, "Bridges intact, advance proceeding." He exhaled, unaware that he himself had nearly been stranded. His own glider had crash-landed far from the fort, and only hours earlier he had sprinted under fire to rejoin his men. The bridges were now Germany's open door into Belgium.
By 8 o'clock, the smoke above Eben-Emael hung thick as fog. The surviving Belgian gunners tried to coordinate counterfire from within sealed chambers. Messages to higher command vanished into silence. Nearby units, seeing the fortress aflame, believed it already lost. Lieutenant Renard moved among his exhausted men, handing out canteens. "We hold until help arrives," he said, though he could not name what help that might be. In a shattered corridor, Deleuze knelt beside a wounded soldier, clutching rosary beads. Machine gun chatter echoed faintly through ventilation shafts, enemy voices shouting in German. Inside one pillbox, a final 60mm gun spat at distant glider silhouettes until a shaped charge silenced it forever. Above the carnage, the sun rose bright and pitiless, throwing harsh light on burning turrets and twisted steel. The defenders, brave but cut off, now fought only for each other and for time.
At midday, Witzig's men reorganized atop the blackened roof. 24 hours earlier, they had rehearsed calmly in Germany. Now they stood amidst shattered concrete and victory. "Signal complete control," Witzig ordered, voice hoarse. His engineers had sustained losses, yet their daring glider tactics had cracked a fortress thought impregnable. Below, flames still licked at open hatches, sending pillars of smoke into the blue. German troops from the 51st Engineer Battalion arrived, their boots clanging on twisted rebar as they secured the site. In the distance, the rumble of armor heading west carried the message farther than any radio could. One of Witzig's men whispered, half in disbelief, "All this by 80 men?" The lieutenant looked over the ruined fortification. 80 men, he said quietly, and surprise. He raised a flare into the air, crimson against the bright sky, the signal that Eben-Emael had fallen.
Deep inside the fortress, the surviving Belgian officers gathered amid broken command boards and sputtering lights. The air was heavy with smoke and defeat. Outside, the last echoes of battle faded. Deleuze stood silently as his commander received the German envoy. After hours of unrelieved bombardment, the order was given to cease fire. "Tell them," the colonel began, voice trembling, "that our duty was done." The white flag rose slowly from a shattered embrasure. For a moment it caught the sunlight, a faint symbol of exhaustion more than surrender. The Germans saluted their fallen foes. Even Witzig paused, removing his helmet in respect. By noon, Eben-Emael was officially in German hands. Inside the tunnels, men sat wordless, tracing cracks in the walls that had once promised invincibility. Above them, the fortress flags of two nations changed places in the wind.
In the days that followed, news of Eben-Emael's fall reverberated across Europe. Military experts were stunned. A fortress designed to resist artillery had fallen in less than 24 hours to glider troops and shaped charges. In northern France, Allied officers pored over reports, disbelief on their faces. For the Germans, the assault became legend, a model of lightning warfare. Witzig received honors, though he scarcely smiled. "It worked this time," he told a correspondent, "but never think it was easy." Belgian survivors marched into captivity, their faces gray with fatigue. Sergeant Deleuze, now a prisoner, looked back at the fortress from the riverbank. Smoke still drifted from its roof, like breath from a dying giant. Somewhere within those walls lay the echo of every promise made to hold the line.
Years later, grass grew over the wounds on Eben-Emael's roof. Tourists walked where fire once roared, their footsteps echoing softly among mossed concrete. Veterans returned, older and quiet, touching the cold walls that had shaped their youth. The gliders, the weapons, and the audacity of that dawn became chapters in the evolving story of warfare, proof that ingenuity could shatter even the strongest walls. Deleuze, long retired, stood upon the hill in a late summer afternoon, sunlight spilling over the fort. He remembered the faces, the orders, the fear. "We were told she could never fall," he murmured. The wind answered with silence. Far above, clouds drifted west, the same path once taken by silent wings that had rewritten history. The fortress remained, hollow yet unbroken, its story carved in concrete and courage forever.